Oh. Oh.
Chrissy and I run Open Love NY together. It's a very large polyamory events group based in New York and serves the New York surrounding area. Our focus is about building community and putting on events where people can come together as a community and meet other poly people and bring in people who are questioning whether or not the lifestyle is the right thing for them.
So we take a bit of an inclusive stance on this, and there was a group years ago called NYC Poly, and they had a very, very strong focus on just LGBT. But we wanted to be inclusive of all identities. So
right, that's why the group is not called Poly whatever. It's called Open Love because we're open to everybody. Because the previous groups I was called Polyamorous NYC, and that group wanted to be a GLBT group that also was about poly, but they wanted to focus or center LGBT people, and that's great. I wish that there were more groups like that, but we saw the need as I'm one of the original founders to create a group that was not necessarily focused on any particular group of persons, but focused on poly. And that's where Open Love really came out, is that we're putting poly in the center. Whoever all comes. But what I think Chrissy has taken the lead on since she took over as president last year, or the year before, was getting us more centered on different groups. So what happens really is when you say everybody is welcome, then you generally sort of open the door for white, hetero, cisgender people to come and sort of take over the space because they're in the majority. And what we found is that what's more important to build a diverse community is to really focus on different marginalized groups, to bring them into the fold and not just say the door's open and make them walk in. We have to be more proactive to invite them in and really make it comfortable for them to come in.
So a lot of people's entrance into the New York City poly community is poly cocktails, and that's great. There are so many people of so many backgrounds that come to that event. But you have to be over 21, and honestly, there aren't many older
able-bodied.
people. Able-bodied, right? Because there are stairs. You don't have to drink, but you're in a bar, so basically there's this pressure to try to conform to the environment around you.
It's a bar scene that I would say is mostly straight. It's mostly kind of a straight vibe. It's a very normal looking bar, so there's kind of a straight vibe.
Right. As a queer person, I pass, so I can kind of navigate these things, but at the end of the day, I notice that there's not a huge amount of diversity in this place. So we also have other events. We have a discussion group, and part of the discussion group has been trying to center marginalized populations by actually bringing in speakers of different identities to kind of explain and talk about their experience through their lens, which has been wonderful because we have the people that we're drawing from Poly Cocktails, and we have people that we've never seen before coming to these events and speaking up and having voices in community that they don't normally have voices in. And this is like a nationwide problem when it comes to polyamory, is that there's a concept that you need to have money to be able to go out and see your partners. You need to be able-bodied. You need to look a certain way.
It's a white thing.
It is a white. Yes, people think it's a white thing. You'd be surprised. There is a lot more diversity, but you're not going to get people to organize under that unless they feel centered and comfortable. So one of the things we've been trying to do is try to diversify our events so that people of all backgrounds and identities can come in, which is why we have Poly Chai.
Yep.
That was started 2 years ago?
Yep, about 2 years ago. And on the discussion groups, we're not only bringing in people from marginalized communities, but we're having them talk about issues that affect those marginalized communities. So we're talking about mental illness in poly, black in poly, trans in poly. So, we're talking about the topics that will actually interest those people. We're not just saying, hey, come on in. We're tailoring our programming each month to appeal to a specific demographic, to bring those people in. And once they're in and they sort of know what we're about, we're hoping that they will stay for the rest of the poly programming that we do throughout the year.
We're also teaching the people that are already members that have never actually faced these systematic oppressions, and these people that have always been privileged, that there's a certain way to interact where they can limit the oppression, and there's a way to do this without it being, I guess, limiting, because a lot of the language is very academic, and we're trying to break it down in a way that everybody can understand, where they're actually actively contributing to making things more equitable, as opposed to there being some sort of weird hierarchy in place.
And we talked about the 3 events that we did: discussion group, poly cocktails, and poly chai. And we do a 4th recurring monthly event called Poly Movie Night, and that's really catered to people who are introverted or have mental illness that can't interact with people for a prolonged period of time. So they'd just be able to come and watch a movie together and just like be in a space. And this one particularly is in the LGBT Center in New York. So it's really just about having different front doors for people to step through. People who are comfortable around other people, like that party atmosphere with the poly cocktails. People who are sober or have disabilities. Poly chai is a good one. People who want to just chill out and just share space without interaction pretty much at all can come to Poly Movie Night. And people who are in it for the educational aspect or want to sit in a circle and talk, but only talk if they're being called upon or when they raise their hand. Discussion groups for you. So we have all these different ways to bring in different kinds of people into the group. And once they're here, they start making friends and knowing people, maybe that'll help them to go to another event.
Oh, jeez, what do we have now?
5,000.
5 or 6, yeah, something like that. There's a lot of poly people in New York City. Yeah.
We have a leadership team, 6 people at this point.
7, with a couple of, we have a menteeship program as well.
Onboarding, yeah, we have a whole process for that.
We're set up to run like a 501c3. We make sure that everything is done according to bylaws. So there's really there's limited oppression. There is active inclusion, and there's a way to make sure that we're kind of setting the standard, being we are so large and people are watching us at all times in other communities as they try to organize. And we've been working with Philadelphia and Dallas Poly and other communities that have the same values and interests as we do to try to bring this on this national scale, which has been really great. So tomorrow we're going to be presenting with Philadelphia on Acing Poly, which is poly and asexuality, which is an intersection that's often not spoken about very much.
Yep. Another marginalized community.
We were at this conference last year, and we noticed that there was a lack of representation for those of us who identify along the asexual spectrum. So I'm demisexual, we have somebody who's gray ace, and there's this conception in polyamory that you have to be very sexual in order to be a part of this community, which is not often the case with a lot of us.
Yeah, a lot of people identify poly or define poly as having sex with more than one person, because sex is the relationship. Like if you're not having sex, it's not a relationship, then you're just friends.
Right.
That's a whole nother conversation. But the point is that what that does is erases asexuals, because asexuals may not be having sex with anybody, but their relationships with people are just as legitimate as people that are having sex. And that's just a truism that apparently is not widely held.
Demisexual is on the ace spectrum. So we're somewhere over here where there's asexuality, which is complete lack of sexual attraction. I'm somewhere over here where I need to form an emotional bond to somebody, which is not temporally based, it's just based on the level of connection that I have with somebody. before I develop either a sexual, I'm also demi-romantic, or a romantic attraction to somebody. So I don't ever see somebody in the street and I'm like, wow, I really want to fuck that person. I don't see somebody in the street and I'm like, I'd like to really be in a relationship with that person. It's more like, I'd really like to get to know that person. There's something spectacular about that person. I don't know what it is yet. I don't know what form our relationship is going to take, but like there's just something about that person that I'd like to explore.
And usually that kind of person does not lead with sex. Like that sex does not drive the relationship forming. Usually it doesn't drive the relationship, period. But it's where it's something like you're seeking the connection first. And sex may be a part of it down the road, but it is not something you lead with.
Right.
Whereas a lot of allosexual people, like the first thing is they want to have sex with that person. And that is what the basis of their attraction and the basis, their motivation to actually have a relationship with them is about their wanting to have sex with them.
I'm the token allosexual person for the workshop that we're doing tomorrow. My child is asexual and in a polyamorous relationship because that relationship style allows everyone to make sure that they are connecting on multiple levels with multiple people in the ways that they want their needs to be met. My child met their partner in high school at the local roller skating rink, and they immediately had a connection, and we immediately moved out of state, unfortunately. And yeah, so they got back together again when my kid was looking for a roommate. My kid and their partner, that's what they want. They wanted a relationship, and they had to figure out a way to make it work, where one of them is allosexual and one of them is asexual. And this is not, actually, I feel like this is becoming more and more common, right? So as more people learn about asexuality, they're seeing, oh my God, this is who I was all along, right? You just need to introduce the term to them, and they see who they are. And then as a result, they have this discussion with their partners, and then they open their relationship, based on that. I feel like sort of the traditional idea is that, you have a straight man and a bisexual woman, and maybe her bisexuality has been either something she learns about herself late in life, or she just never did anything with it really, and so they open the relationship, right, so that she can explore herself, but also maybe he'll get a threesome out of it or whatever. Like, this is just a sort of that's sort of like what you'll see in the media when poly people are portrayed. But lately, in the past 2 to 3 years, I've seen a lot more couples that are coming into the poly community because one of the partners is like, I'm pretty sure this asexual thing is who I am. How can we still keep our relationship together? How can we keep that closeness? How can we find a new level of intimacy for ourselves that fits in with my sexuality and your sexuality? And polyamory has that flexibility in it to have multiple kinds of relationships on multiple levels.
So that when people come into these spaces, they're just learning about it for the first time, and they have these light bulb moments, and they feel really happy that there's a word for it, and that there's some sort of community gathering for it, and that they're not weird or alone.
After events, I often get at least a couple people come and tell us that they appreciate the work that we're doing, that they appreciate that we have these events, that there are regular events, and I think there is some sense that they appreciate that we try our best to make them accessible and safe. I think that's one of the things that we really stake our reputation on, is keeping these events in safer space, in a place where it's like no cruising behavior. We're really strict about that. We're trying to keep it from feeling like a meat market where people are getting hit on all the time. And because we're not a dating group. We don't do dating events. We don't do speed dating or any of that stuff. It does tend to be problematic for marginalized audiences.
Absolutely.
Which we're all really trying to be very sensitive to.
Like the ace and the aromantic people that want to go to events just to meet
And
community.
the people who
like-
somehow won't date trans people.
Right.
You know?
Don't even get me started.
But we don't need to talk about that.
No, we don't. We're having a happy moment.
It's about making up your own rules and following them.
You don't own me. I'm not just one of your many toys. You don't own me. Don't say I can't go with other boys.